Hello there, my name's Tim Worstall. I was the author of the original English language version of 20 Economics Fallacies. I must say it's been a lovely surprise to me that it was translated into Farsi, and my many thanks to those who did work on it. And I understand it's actually gone into a second edition, which is a lovely surprise as well. I should point out that I'm not an economist. I am somebody who does know some economics. Those two things are not necessarily, but often mutually contradictory. But the purpose of the book was to point out that what some people believe about economics is not, in fact, true. It's not what economics tries to say, and it's also deeply unsettling when the people who make political and economic policy are in the grip of these things that are just not true. So that was the purpose of the book, and the selection was clearly of rather more things that are wrong on the left-hand side of the political spectrum, simply because as a classical liberal, I tend to think that people on the left-hand side of the political spectrum are more often wrong than people on my side of it. But it's worth really thinking about what we're trying to do with the study of economics and the application of it to the real world. We're trying to make life better, and we're trying to make life better for the average person in the street, for in English we say the man on the Clapham omnibus, borrowing a phrase from an English poet, G.K. Chesterton. And I'm sure there's a Tehrani or Iranian equivalent to that, what we call just the average person. Well, what is it that makes them better off? And the answer is usually markets, but it's not always markets. And this is what really marks the difference between, say, a classical liberal like myself and, say, a libertarian. A libertarian is more likely to start with a set of morals and then try and fit the economy into those morals. Now, it's possible I don't have many morals, or I have bad morals, and certainly life has been very fun given the morals that I have. But it's also true that other people don't necessarily fit into any one particular moral system, however that's detailed and whatever the starting point is. Other people have their own ideas about life. So classical liberals often end up in a very policy adjacent space, in the sense that we say markets, and markets are lovely, and economic freedom and so on, but not really for moral reasons. We end up there simply because that works. If we actually want to make life better for the average person, end up with everybody getting 3 square meals a day, and somewhere to lay their head at night, and a change of clothes. I mean, these in human history are the unusual things. The wealth that we have in this modern world is the thing that we have to explain. Poverty doesn't need explanation. Poverty has always existed. It's how did we get out of that needs the explanation. As the American economist Brad DeLong has many a time pointed out, the one only big and useful question in all of economics is really, what in the heck happened in 1750? Suddenly, people climbed up out of subsistence. Now it's been partial. It's not the whole of the world yet. Not everybody in 1750. It happened in different countries at different times. But it did happen. And so, as economists, or as someone like me, a commentator on economics, we actually want to know what happened, why did it happen, and how do we allow it to happen to everybody? Okay, the answer, yes, often is markets. It's not always markets. Again, that's something that divides us from those that start with the morals and then move on to what policy should be. We classical liberals are actually looking at what people have done and say, well, that worked, so let's do more of that then. And again, looking at what people have done and said, well, that didn't work, so let's do less of that, perhaps. And that really is the task for us. And if we are going to be economists, or we're going to write newspapers, or we're going to do economic analysis, then that's what we are intending to do, or should be intending to do. What works? Let's do more of it. This requires that we analyse what people intend should happen from a policy, and also compare that to what actually happens as a result of that policy. And that's really what the book itself is about. 20 short little examples of this is what people think this policy is about, or does, or should do, and what actually is the result that stems from actually implementing that policy or that idea. And as you have a copy of the book in front of you, I'm sure, or at least some of you will have read it, the answer is often, well, people believe differently from what actually happens. We can look at a specific example from the Iranian experience, which is the market in kidneys. And this works. Now, it's possible to have moral objections to it, and at least one economist, a guy called Al Roth, got his Nobel Prize for the study of exactly these sorts of markets. They're called repugnant markets. Markets where people have a specific moral objection to this being a market transaction. And fine, okay, people have a moral objection. And fine, morals could in fact overcome the efficiency of the market. The point is that the market actually works, and it works in this specific instance as well. Iran is the only place in the world that doesn't have a whole queue of people dying waiting for a kidney transplant. So the market works for kidney transplants. As I say, that doesn't mean it has to overwhelm any moral consideration. It just means that we actually have to say, well, yes, okay, you can have that moral consideration if you wish, but it does mean that people are going to die waiting for a kidney transplant. And this then goes back a little bit further into history. There was definitely several centuries where both the Persian and Arabic world were the home of economic liberalism in a way that medieval Christian Europe simply wasn't. So it's not something that's outside the experience that you too, or you again, will be at the forefront of exactly this sort of economic freedom which leads to the great wealth of the average person. I think that's something that we would all hope will happen, and it's something that isn't actually related to any religious or political impulse or moral set of restrictions. It's just, we know what works. We have in the modern world, in the modern literate world, we have 250, 260 years of experience of this. And we have a list of things that work. We have a list of things that don't. So let's do more of those that work, and let's do fewer of those that don't work. As far as I have a message about anything at all, it really is just that simple. We have some ideas about what works, so let's do more of them. And it's not really a grand rallying cry, and it's never going to be the foundation of a revolution or anything. But in English we have a phrase called the greybeards, those of us who have reached the maturity of losing our hair colour. And I think that would really be the one thing that I have learnt in my years, or decades if you wish, is yes, okay, we know some stuff, so let's do more of what works and let's stop doing the stuff that doesn't. On that, I now wish you the very finest time considering the book. My thanks again to the translators, and that's it. That's the rallying cry. Teach people that we should be doing more of